harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zeimet.
And welcome to the Beverly Zeimet Show, where being the best you has just gotten easier. My guest today is Jess Bubbico, and she's calling out of Florida, right?
I am.
What part of Florida are you in?
I'm on Marco Island, Southwest Florida.
That's a cool place to be. And you mentioned earlier when we were talking that the beaches are going to possibly start to open.
I think they are. I know some of the places a little bit north of us have started to open. So I'm really hoping that with social distancing, we can all get back on the beach pretty soon and get connected to the ocean. So,
oh, that would be so lovely. We were down by the river yesterday and just being out there and just listening to the water flow and watching it. It was so nice. So nice. Mm-hmm. I miss nature. That's kind of my go-to to revamp, you know?
I hear ya. Same here.
Yeah. So what's the temperature down there? Are you getting up in the 80s now?
We are in the 90s. It was actually, I think the projected temperature for today is 90 degrees. So we have been hot and humid.
Yeah, it is humid down there. I know. I have a brother down in the Orlando area, and sometimes that humidity is like, whoa, that's enough, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's be so lovely. We were down by the river yesterday. I'm out here in New Mexico right now for the time being, and it's starting to hit the 80s now. But it's a dry nature, as they say, right?
Totally different. You're not wearing like a jacket of sweat all of the time. But yeah, it's hot down there. I was in New Mexico a couple of years ago in Taos, and it's beautiful.
Oh, Taos is absolutely one of the most beautiful places down here.
Projected temperature for today is 90 degrees. So
Albuquerque to me is just too much
humid,
too much static. And I've been in big cities and stuff, but I don't know. It's just something about Albuquerque that's like, I can just like pass it by, you know. But I do enjoy Taos and Santa Fe, and
yeah, we did the hot air balloon festival in Albuquerque and then stayed in Santa Fe. So we got a little bit of taste of both. And I loved Santa Fe too. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, walking down the art district is like breathtaking, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
Yeah, that was my favorite place, and I've been to a lot of different art places, but I don't know. There's just something about Santa Fe that just kind of captures you, you know.
Yeah, it really does. I love the hanging chili peppers that they have.
Yeah, they're kind of like all over.
Yeah, we did the.
We were down there one time
and stayed in
the
Santa
kids
Fe,
were
so
like
we got a little bit of taste
they
of
were
both.
They were fairly small.
Santa
We had
Fe
a
too,
van, and we just had an open van because of the business that I had, and we just kind of emptied it.
It is. It really is.
Oh my goodness, we bought some chili peppers. This is we were living in Denver. We bought some chili peppers that they had just cooked up, you know, so you had that nice smell. And we're driving from Santa Fe back to Denver, and it's a trip. It's I don't know, 8 or 9 hours. It was a while. Oh my gosh, we had the windows down and everything because those chili peppers in there. After a while, your nose is burning, your eyes are running, and
I love the hanging chili. I'm sneezing, I think, from the chili peppers you're talking about now.
We better stop talking about chili peppers.
I can imagine eyes burning because I drove from Denver down to Santa Fe when I went, and that is a commitment, that drive. So
yeah, it is. It's a beautiful drive, though. It's a beautiful drive.
Yes.
But yeah. Well, speaking of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to drop the chili peppers. We're going to talk about intuition.
Yes.
Yeah. Ooh, I love it. I love it. Right?
Too.
And it's interesting when we're all intuitive, right? Everyone has that ability. It's whether we choose to develop or not to develop it, or how we choose to use it. And I can remember as a child growing up, I didn't know what it was. And I never really understood what that intuitiveness was until I moved to Denver in '79, and I met some people that were asking me if I if I actually knew what I was doing, and I didn't even know what they were talking about, right? And back then, it was called psychic, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I had not really even heard the word psychic growing up in Iowa on a farm. It was another world, and that was a long time ago, shall we say. Emptied it. So you're looking at someone who has been 70 years on the planet, okay? You know, so back in that day,
I wouldn't have guessed that, but yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's what my earth time says, but my belief system is I'm 45. I've been 45 for a long time, and I intend to be 45 for a lot longer. You know,
yeah.
So and we'll talk about that mindset and that belief and all of that, because that's part of that intuitiveness. So once I understood psychic, right? It's like, so what is that? You're looking at someone who has, I believe it was 81. It was 81 or 82. I took a course called Silva Mind Control.
I wouldn't have guessed that, but yes.
That changed my world because it gave me clarity on something I had been doing all my life that I didn't know. That's what I was doing. And boy, I'll tell you, from there, everything in my life just soared into a different world. Because
I've heard of this before, Silva Mind Control. Mind Control or training, you said?
It's control. It's called Silva Mind Control, and I believe it's still called that. You know, Silva was a gentleman from Mexican descent, and he, I think, only had like a 4th or 5th grade education, and the person who was doing the class actually worked for 10 or 12 years with Silva in his techniques and everything, and wrote all of his literature. You know, so he's the one that put the whole program together for us, right? So why not learn from the best, as they say, right?
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, and it was actually the last class that he did, because he was moving off into some of his own direction, but he did that final class, and I'm telling you, it was just amazing. And all the techniques and everything that he talks about in there really gives that basic understanding of what intuition is and what the psychic world is all about. You know, that sixth sense, as they put it, you know, too. It's been called so many different things. It's your gut feeling, right? It's just that
you're not kidding.
You're knowing. You know what you know, but you don't know how you know it, right?
Yeah.
And it's, do you pay attention to it? But he did that. Right?
Totally.
And for me, it's been an asset. You know, some people look at it as a curse, but, you know, I look at it as really being an asset. And especially when I'm working with clients, because you can like just see that little further depth, right? And it just kind of gives you an edge to where you can give them different suggestions, right? And ask different questions. Have you found that to be true when you're working with clients?
I do. And, you know, I find it really interesting because you just said something really that is interesting. It's that idea of the gut feeling. And what I found is that a lot of people don't have gut feelings, as it's put that way. They do, but it shows up differently for everyone. Everyone's gut feeling manifests in a different way for them. And so I found in the beginning, because I started teaching intuitive development probably 4 or 5 years ago. And everyone's intuition speaks to them in a different way. And the way that I like to think of it is I teach people how to decode. I'm like a language teacher. I teach people how to decode the language of their intuition. So some people, their gut feeling, like I know Alex Agresta, who you had on the show just before, the couple days before, she gets a gut hunch, and it's like she gets a yes or a no, and she's like, I'm following that idea, that's it. And for me, I actually don't get gut hunches. I move through, for me, it's not usually a yes or a no. It comes more so through emotion. I tend to be a bit more on the clairsentient side, where there's an emotion and it moves through me, and I kind of have to feel it in my body and feel and decode what that feeling means. Some people are super clairvoyant, so they get that visual imagery. They get an idea through their dream. Yeah, exactly. And then some people, are very claircognizant, which is what you said in the beginning. I know, I don't know how I know, but I know. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
So everybody's intuition is just a bit different. I don't know. Are you familiar at all with human design?
I've heard that word mentioned, but I'm not really learned on it. So why don't you go ahead and explain it? The audience would probably like to hear what that's all about.
Yeah, well, the human design is I've been studying human design for the past 2 years, and human design it's a science that was brought through, I believe, in the 80s by a gentleman who goes by the name of Ra. And he basically, it brings together the I Ching, the Kabbalah, astrology, and the chakra system. And each person, you basically enter your birth date, time of birth, just like you would for astrology, and it comes up with this map
Oh, wow.
of
That's
your body.
interesting.
It looks, yeah, it's like, it almost looks like the energy. To me, the way I think of it is, it's like the manual for your car. Your
Right.
human design is kind of the manual for how your energy operates and functions. And what's really interesting about human design, and why I bring this up, is because human design really informs us of how we make decisions. And some people, their intuition comes through, like, in that they have this, what they call a sacral response, which is a gut hunch. They get a yes or they
Right.
get a no. Some people are emotional. I'm emotional. So it's an energy. It's, the energy kind of moves through you. You've got to feel it out, maybe sleep on a decision, etc. Some people are self-projected, which means that they kind of have to feel into their heart and their heart space, and
Right.
feel into their decisions. Um, some people have, like, the intuitive hit, they're splenic, so their intuition's gonna, that's the way that they put it in human design. It's like you sort of just know the answer. It's kind of that, like, to me,
Right.
that sort of their cognizance. So everyone's intuition is a little bit, as you know, you've studied this, I'm sure. I'm not saying anything to you you don't know, but for the audience,
Well, no, some
everybody
things you're right. This human thing
different.
that I didn't actually know that they had, where you could, like you say, make that map. That's very interesting. And now you really got my brain going here. It's like I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm not certified in human design, but I started doing mini human design readings. And when I started working with clients, it has been so helpful in helping me to understand how to work with someone.
Sure.
Because when I first started doing readings and teaching intuitive development, I would often say it's your gut, like, trust your gut. Or, and people were like, where's my gut? Is it in my toes? Like, I don't
Right.
feel anything in my gut. Like, what is it? Is it in my head? And being able to actually show someone this map of their energy was really, really helpful, because it also maps out your purpose, and it maps out, how you make decisions and how you do things and how your energy works. And I found that people, instead of trying to be like someone else or do something the way someone else does
Right.
it, they were like, oh, I'm a manifester. Here's how I do things. Oh, I'm a projector. I need to work, I don't need to work a million hours. I wait for an
Right.
invitation. Like, it helps people, I don't want to say function correctly, but, like, jump through less hoops and try to be like
Right.
other people who just could embody themselves and how they do things.
It's interesting the word that you just said, projector. It just kind of triggered something in me. I have a friend that lives out in North Carolina. I was out there a few months ago, and she had mentioned that thing that you just talked about, the human, what'd you call it, human consciousness? No,
Human design.
human design, right? And so we talked a little bit about it, and she said, you are a projector. And she started telling me some of the things, on that, right? And she had a friend that actually does the
Human design chart.
charts, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's what you'd call it, right? And she did do a little bit of a reading on me and whatever. Um, and I just connected those two things when you said projector, right? And it's so true. I mean, I know my personality and all that kind of stuff. But you also just made a comment on what you said, spleen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when I teach the chakra system, because I work a lot with the chakra system, I actually work with 18 chakras, not 7.
Wow.
And the spleen chakra, so when we talk about that gut feeling or that intuitiveness, that knowing, the spleen chakra, which is right at the base of the breastbone, right, is a direct line into the third eye, which is your all-knowing, right? And so when you look at in between the chakras, you have like a little tube thing that sends the energy from one chakra to the next. So when your chakras are, when you align them, and if they don't function properly, and it's like you're still all over the charts, it's because people don't realize that there's that little tube where the energy has to run up the spine through each one of the chakras. It's part of that kundalini, right? So don't forget to open up the little tube in between. And so when you're looking at the spleen chakra, it has its own little additional, which literally goes from the spleen, and it's just like this curve that comes into the head, right?
Wow.
So it's that
Cool.
knowing. So when you say, where's your gut feeling? Is it in my head? Well, it can be. So when you open up to just allowing yourself to be, to just know, to sense it, whatever sense that you use, see, touch, taste, smell, feel, right? It's there, and it's loud and clear, because this doesn't go into your brain. It goes into the mind. The mind is the direct connection of the spirit, right? Of the soul essence of who you are. It's that all-knowingness that taps into the information of the universe, the infinite, the divine intelligence, the God source, whatever you want to label it, right? And so when you start to understand all the different chakras, more so than just those 7 main chakras, wow, now we're talking different avenues in the body. I actually teach psychic surgery, and that was one of the things that really, really caught me when I did civil mind control. The last segment of it was being able to tap into someone else's spirit, shall we say, their soul essence. Because you can, when you tap into that, you can describe a person to the T, right down to what they're wearing, by that projection, just by someone saying their name. You don't need to know anything about them, and you can tell and you can read them. And when we did that part of the class, to me, that was just so spot on, and explained so much of why I knew so much about people that I had never met, right? And that's opened the door into the whole realm of psychic healing. And then when I moved to Vegas, so it was like 92, 93, I met someone who was actually teaching a different level of psychic surgery that then just really enhanced everything that I had been doing and took it to a different level. And since then, I've incorporated a lot of psychic surgery and actually teach a class on that, and working through 18 different chakras. And when you can read the body, we talk about, that intuition. Some people don't see because they're not visual or they're not audio. I kind of use a visual and audio together in the field. I've learned how to develop every sense into that intuitiveness, which kind of gives you a full picture. But it started with just an instantaneous knowing that turned into a picture that a voice came behind, like boom, 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 really fast, right? And when I teach the energy healing work, is how you feel it through your palm, which is your hand chakra. You've probably done the little thing where you've done this, right, to feel the energy come through your hands and whatever. Well, those are chakras that we don't realize, and you can break them open because sometimes they're plugged, right? And then your hands get real sensitive to energy. You can pick up something, and you can feel the energy in the water. You can feel the energy in a bottle of vitamins. You can feel the energy, in anything that you touch. So when you scan the physical body, you're able to feel through the intensities of the heat or the cold or a block, a heaviness or whatever, right? As you scan down the body, which is really pretty cool, right? And let's see, I've got my trusty little pendulum always laying here, right?
Yeah.
And so I teach people how to use a pendulum, right? And it's, it's something that sometimes we can use this that helps kind of clarify if we have a little bit of doubt on what we're sensing, is to be able to just use a pendulum and ask, and when you run this down the body, as you're going, it'll start moving. And again, knowing which is your yes direction and which is your no direction, or your positive direction or your negative direction, to know where a block is. So there's different little techniques that you can develop, and different things that you can use to kind of help verify and clarify that. But again, this is something that, it is an object. So you can make it do what you want. So if you play with your pendulum and you ask it and you tell it to spin right or left, it will do that. You have that power over that. So when you're using a pendulum, it's blanking the mind, and I think that's probably one of the hardest things for an intuitive. So when you're teaching someone that intuition, do you find it like hard to have people get out of their own way to just trust what's happening outside of them versus trying to force it to do something?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is the biggest challenge for people, I think, in the beginning, is really tuning in and going, okay, I trust myself. And
Right.
the way that I teach, I've used pendulums. I'm not great with a pendulum, to be honest with you. I love them, and I know so many people who are amazing with them, and I'm like, oh, that's something I feel like I could work on, because a lot of when I teach about the chakras and things like that, I teach tuning into the chakra and using, like you said, all of your intuitive senses, because you
Right.
can develop all of them. I find when people are first starting out, they tend to feel like, yeah, I do have vivid dreams, or like there's one sense or two that seems to be more predominant, sort of when
Right.
they're an unconscious competent, if you will, like when they don't know a whole lot about it. On a cognitive level, I mean, everybody I think knows, like again, that intuitive level, but
Right.
when they're sort of unaware of it, I think they tend towards one or two, however it comes through for them. But yeah, I would say trust is the biggest thing in the beginning. When I teach my classes, the first thing that we do, like the first week, we're reading someone remotely. All they get is a name.
Right.
And then they're tuning in and they're seeing what comes through their vessel. So a lot of the times I say to people, you might think of your Uncle Jim, and you're like, but I'm supposed to be focusing on Cindy Howe, like whatever her name is. I'm supposed to be, why am I thinking of him? Like, get out of my brain. And I'm like, no, when we're tuned in and there's something coming through our vessel, there's a purpose.
Right.
And we can ask it a question, why is my Uncle Joe coming up when I'm thinking about Cindy Lou Who? Like, what is that? Can you give me some more information? And have that conversation with energy, because as you know, you can converse with energy. You can ask it questions. It's not, I think a lot of the times people are like, oh, okay, just saw something that's like, what is it? I just felt that, what? Okay. And they just want to move on. But I think the beauty of it, and where the trust component is, which is what you had asked, is it's in learning to converse. It's in learning to understand how to work with energy, as opposed to thinking it's just something that comes to them or happens to them. And I think, the more that I see people learn how to interact, it's like they start trusting themselves, not just in a reading, but in all areas of their life, which I think is what the beauty is of opening up your gifts.
Oh, yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Because we all have those abilities. We all have those gifts. It's whether we choose to enhance them, to accept them, and to use them. That's choice, right? That's choice. Yeah. And yeah, you made some really good points in what you were just sharing there. It's that trust, and I've talked to a lot of intuitives. I've talked to people who are actually doing energy work and stuff like that, but they still have that little piece of doubt when it comes to checking in on other people's energy, from a distance. Not so much if they're right there, if they're doing a Reiki treatment, or if they're doing an energy, if they're checking chakras or whatever. But when it's a long distance, this is when they start to really doubt that, are they really picking up on what it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you still do long distance readings as well?
I would say probably 98% of everything that I do is long distance, and has been, right? It has been, and working. Oh my gosh, this was before cell phones, and this was, it just always blew my mind how people would find the trail, because I'm traveling, I'm on the go all the time, right? And they would chase me down through this trail of phone calls to get to where I was. It was insane. And
Wow.
we're talking people who lived on the other side of the pond, okay?
Wow.
So I would get calls from all around the world from people that's like, how did you find me? Right? Well, I heard you were here, and this was not internet. This is in the early 2000s, right? No internet, no cell phones, yet they found you. So if you're meant to be found, you're going to be found, right?
Absolutely.
And now it's really easy to be found, right? But again, when you really trust the energies, when you really trust your abilities, the psychic surgery aspect of it, this is what I really enjoyed about that, is you can remove tumors, right?
Wow.
You can fix broken bones, and this all happens instantaneous, and that has happened on numerous occasions. I brought people out of comatose states, people who were ready to check out, and done emotional healing work through their spirit things, long distance, right? And once they cleaned up that uncertainty that they had, with the emotional stuff, they allowed themselves to come back into their physical body and be back on the planet, and started living their life completely different than when they went into that comatose state, because now their emotions weren't running the show,
Yeah.
right? And that's very real. I mean, you can have someone who's ready to go into surgery, and the fear, and again, when we talk about energies, right, the fear of going under the knife was greater than the fear of having a tumor. It's like, let's use that fear to remove this tumor so that you don't have to do that little piece in between. So let's give it up. Are you ready to give it up? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, right? And so you go in with their higher consciousness and you remove that. And then a few days later, they're there, having to get the x-rays and all the other EKGs and DDDs and whatever they call them, right? To make sure that they know exactly where it's located, so that when they go in, they know what's all around, that area. And they can't find it. It's not there. It's already gone. So the power of the mind is unbelievable, right? And so you can be you can be your own surgeon. You can change everything that you want. It's where your thought processes is, right? Where your mindset is, where your belief is, and your trust. So there we go back to that trust again, right? So we are the creators of our destiny. We are in charge of this vehicle. It's like you said, it's like your car, right? It's like any other piece of equipment. You don't see the workings on the inside, but they're there. What tools are you going to use? When you use your mind and you bring yourself into that meditative state, into that intuitive state, you understand where the chakra systems are and the energy ports, what they're connected with, what organs are they connected to, what is the emotion that it's connected with, how do I clean this up? It's a process, right? It's not something that just poof and it's gone. But when you understand what that process is, you can eliminate it very fast. It doesn't take years. It doesn't take days. It takes moments. There is no time and space except in this continuum here on third dimension, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I love what you're saying. And I really love that. Another part too, I think what I've found personally, and I'm curious to hear from your experience as well, is that especially when we're working with other people and working on the body, the energy body, et cetera, I often find too the willingness of the person to, we can go in and we can see what needs to be cleaned up. And there has to be that willingness from the person who's on the receiving end or who you're doing the work with to go in and go, okay, I'm ready. Like I truly am ready to let go of this, or I'm truly ready to work with this energy. Because I think when there is that, I think that when we can have that recognition of somebody's here to support me in clearing this energy,
Right.
clearing this emotion, clearing all this, there's some magic, like true alchemy that happens when something is witnessed by another, right? Like if I think about, Jesus and what he was doing, like it was miraculous what he was doing because it was witnessed by so many people, and they,
Right.
it was
Exactly.
spoken about. And yeah, and there has to be on the receiver's end as well, again, that acknowledgement of like, okay, I'm ready for this, number one, or that this power that's happening, this alchemy that's happening with this other person is partially, and it's due to me, like me being ready, me being willing. This person's helping me to see where it is and experience it and clean it up, and my soul is in conjunction with it. This power is from within me. Because I've worked with those clients before who are like, I don't really know, or, kind of just removed or withdrawn. Like, I don't know, let's see if you can figure it out. Or,
Right.
There has to be that recognition of self as well, because any process with an intuitive, with an energy healer, whoever you work with, it's alchemy together. So I love what you're talking about, because you're so right. Like everything you're saying, I'm sitting here, I'm like, yeah. Like it's so magic. Like and again, that is all within all of us. Like it's within all of us. So
Right.
I love
And
what you're saying.
yeah, it is that belief system, right? You touched on a couple of things, when you said, when the other person, right? So when I do work on someone, and again, when you're talking to them and you've never met, like we've never met before. We've come face to face here, 20 minutes ago or however long we've been talking, right? This is our first connection, yet it's running so smooth as if we'd known each other. So there's that connection. So you ask yourself, how many times have you run into someone and it's like, man, it's like I've known you all my life, but I just met you, right? That comfortableness, that openness, that trusting, right? But again, sometimes we don't have that with ourselves, right? And it is that recognition, that acknowledgement that someone else is there to say, I saw it, I was there, it happened, right? To make it more acceptable and believable for the self, right? So when I'm working with someone, I always move through the higher consciousness, right? And talk with spirit. So when I'm in a conversation and it's like, okay, you scan the body, this is what I see, and these are the things that's going to happen, and whatever. So we're going to start removing different things. Are you ready for this? And they give you consent. I also move and go into the higher consciousness to get the consent on the spirit level, on the soul level, right? And usually it's a yes. I mean, almost 99.9%. But there's always that 1/10 of 1%. You're going to get a charge out of this. I had one client, she would call me every so many months, right? She'd give me a call. And it just kind of got to be a running joke. Okay, you need to talk to my higher spirit to see if I'm ready for this. Because it inevitably, right? She's, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do this. This is what I spotted. I need some help to move through this and whatever. Okay. So it's like, all right, so we move into the higher consciousness, right? And it would be like, okay, this is the message I'm getting. Before we can go there, this is what you need to do on your end, and call me back. So she'd do it. Sometimes it'd be a day, sometimes it'd be 3-4 days, might be a week, and she'd call me back. Okay, check it out, and then we're ready to go. But there are certain things that you have to do as an individual to be open, to make that doorway acceptable and ready to walk through. consciously you might say, yeah. But again, it's your higher spirit. It's that soul that says, no, this was part of your journey here. This was part of the lesson, part of the contract that you agreed to when you came to the planet. So therefore, before you go that avenue, this is what you need to experience and do this in your power, right? And that's where that guidance is. And I'm sure you're finding that with your clients, is you're giving them options and opportunity, and is to, okay, what if we were to do this, or what if we were to do that? Give them a different perspective on how to deal with something or how to go beyond it, right?
Yeah. I love what you're saying. Yes, absolutely, I do. And something that I'm really resonating a lot with what you're saying is around, sometimes there's a lesson, like there is, I truly believe, and I'm sure you do too, like we are here because we are here to learn lessons. Our soul is here to grow.
Right.
And I've seen at times, I truly believe in that life is here to teach us, and that life is like moving through us to teach us. It's here for us. And even sometimes that means like going through stuff that's not super fun, like to bring something into my own consciousness that I see, right? Like there's, I think it's Bruce Lipton talks about I'm sure you're familiar with Bruce Lipton.
Quantum physics. Yeah. Very, very much.
Talks about having a friend, they talks about having your friend Bill, and Bill, you meet Bill's dad and you're like, oh my God, Bill, you're just like your dad. And Bill's like, I am not like my dad. How could you ever say that? And he's like, we're all Bill. Like we are all like the people around us. And so I think at times, I've seen people get a bit stuck in, as Alex and I call it, like getting stuck in the healing hole of like, I've got to keep healing myself in order to be able to blah, blah, blah. Or I have to be able to, I have to get to this point or fix myself or heal myself in order to then do this thing that I want to do, or whatever it may be. And what I've found is there's so much power in recognizing that, yes, there are certain things that we want to go in and we want to heal and we want to look at and we want to be done with. And some of those things are really serving us in learning the lessons on the journey that we came here to learn. And so I think there's power in that balance and that contrast of like, okay, like I know this is here. I'm ready to move past it. I'm ready to move through it. I'm ready to learn the lessons from it. And then also knowing life is going to show us the way. Like I'm going to bump up against the dresser. I'm going to bump up against the limiting belief or that energy that's maybe stuck, or, whatever it may be. And life is going to show me contrast so that I can, again, continue to grow, continue to alchemize that which is no longer serving me in my life as well. So I love what you're saying, because like we have so much ability to go in and heal and do these things. And really, like life is showing us the path to step more fully into, at every moment, the embodiment of who we are at our core.
And that's part of that whole awakening thing. Are you familiar with Joe Dispenza?
Yeah.
It's interesting when I got introduced to him. I don't even know for sure how I came across my path, but the science that he has, it is so clarified. Everything that I knew, I knew what I was doing. I knew it worked. How it worked, I didn't question, right? But listening to him and watching some of his videos and things, I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. Now to be able to put that science, and we still live in this world of show me, right? So I've used, some of Joe's conversations, things, especially the science things, how it was proven through science. And when you get someone who is that tech person, it is so awesome to be able to have that science of proof behind you to carry that through, right, in that belief structure. So when you start looking at it and you start moving through, and we look at the environment. You tapped on something here with Bill, right? And none of us want to be like our parents, right? It's like, oh my God, don't you dare say you're acting just like your mother or whatever. It's like, oh no, I'll strangle you.
Yeah.
I have 10 brothers and sisters, right? So
Wow.
yeah, and I'm second oldest. So it's interesting to watch, how they respond and how the second half is so different from the first half, because mom and dad had so much more knowledge raising the second half than the first half. There was more financial difference is the same. We grew up in Iowa. Well, my dad retired early and they moved to Montana. So the whole environment, everything is so different. It's really interesting to watch that. And so to be able to see from the different perspectives, the environment and your belief system and the things that transpire around the people that you're with, these all become, as Joe would say, your personality traits, right? Mm-hmm. They're in your DNA. They become that soul cellular memory that is so instilled that it's an automatic response, that you are unconsciously responding to a database of information built from childhood on up. Well, as an adult and you're out in the real world and you're doing your own thing, you're still responding from your rearview mirror, right? So to recognize, and that's key, and that's why I developed the little system of getting rid of these emotions that I call the rah-rah system. It's to recognize that, hey, I am running on a pattern, a repeat pattern that is not my belief anymore. But you've got to acknowledge that pattern as your truth, because it's so instilled. It's created that personality trait, that automatic pilot of belief, because it was truth when you created it from the database of information you had. So when you can recognize and acknowledge it, then the subconscious says, yep, you're right, that is the truth, so here we go. Now it's going to be open to communication. Then you can release it, because it's willing to give up instead of being in conflict, because you acknowledged it as being the truth, and you're saying, okay, you're right, subconscious, but you know what? We're going to change things because we have a different database of information. We got something better. Instead of this piece of candy, let's get this piece of candy, right? And then the releasing is so much easier, so much quicker, and so much more thorough. Instead of just cutting the top of the weed off and leaving the root to get stronger to build, more grass or plant or whatever it is to come back up, right? And don't keep cutting it off, but get to the root cause. When you get to the root cause, it's gone. And then now you have a void, like what Lipton talks about, right? The universe doesn't like a void. Something's going to jump in there. So you might as well put in there what you want in there, which is now your new truth from the database of information from the environment you're currently experiencing. Now you put that truth in there. That instills in the soul cellular memory as well as the physical cell. Now you become running on a new autopilot. Mm-hmm. And then you can accept that as your truth. And you can start living it without the old stuff coming back and repeating, right? Yeah. And this is something you can do in 60 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Right?
And I love that you're saying, the acceptance component, like the acceptance of, or acknowledgement, I think is the word that you use,
right.
Accepting, acknowledging that, like, this was a truth. Because I think when people are like, oh no, that belief came up again, I'm back to square one, like I can't believe. It's like, I think people start to freak themselves out, and then they get out of, then they think they're stuck and they're not. So I love that you're talking, like the way that you're talking about it brings almost a sense of playfulness of like, a sense of like, it's just okay. I think the subconscious has gotten a bad rap at times, where it's like, oh, I've got to banish those subconscious beliefs. And it's like, no, subconscious rocks. Like, I am here alive sitting on this chair because my subconscious figured out how to sit on a chair and like how to function in this environment, like not walk,
Right.
constantly be bumping things. Like, it's so important. And so I love the way that you're bringing a sense of lightness and a sense of ease and grace to, like, oh, we can just kind of do it quickly by just acknowledging what was there because it was truth at one time, like because it was all that I knew at that point in time. So I love that.
When you're in denial of your truth, even if it's a false truth, call it a false truth. It's easier for people to recognize it's a false truth, but it was a truth. But when you're in denial of it, you put your whole cell memory into conflict. And then it's going to create a battle. Because the subconscious, I guarantee, is going to win out every single time. We call that kind of like buyer's remorse. So let's just say you're in a conversation with someone, right? And they've got this plan going on, and they say, "Can you help us do this?" "Oh yeah, that's where I shine. Yeah, no problem. Right? You got it, right?" And then everybody disperses, and now the subconscious says, and just who the heck do you think you were? You said you're going to do this. Remember the last time you did something like that? This happened and that happened. And, all this chatter from the subconscious starts playing a role. And then what happens? Oh my gosh. Hey, Jane, remember when you asked me to do, I just checked my calendar and there's just no way I can do this, right? We build an excuse, a lie, to get out of it, because why? The subconscious overruled everything that you were just trying to go beyond. And you allowed that fear to take over, once again, the autopilot. So again, that's because you were in denial of what your experience was back here from the old database. Don't deny it. Don't fight it. Work with it, and you'll get through and beyond it so much smoother and so much faster. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the universe will continue to bring situations to move through that and move through old beliefs. Like I had a situation a while back where things did not go as I wanted them to go. Like there was a lot of clashing of just energy. Like it turned out not great. Like it was not a great situation, and with a group of people, and I had to go into a similar situation 6 weeks later. And I couldn't get out of it. My subconscious was like, well, what? I mean, how about, well, you could make up this excuse or that excuse. And I'm like, no, I can't, especially because there's money involved and like committed people. And like, there's just no way out. Like you could, and no, in my body, I was like, well, I'm starting to not feel great. And I'm like, no, we're doing this thing. Like it is happening no matter what. And one of the things that, came through in the first scenario and the first situation was around like safety, and are we safe, and are we secure,
right?
And then the next time that I had to do it, there was actually like physical, we were going to another country, so it was like there was potentially like physical safety issues of us going, so my mind's like, oh my God, am I keeping everyone safe, all of my story coming up. And it was the most powerful catalyst for having to work through the all of the old beliefs, all of the old truths. Like the situation really, because I chose to go into it and work with the old beliefs and work with what was coming up, it was a really powerful catalyst for change. It's like going into, it's like going back into the war zone where the war was fought, how am I going to go differently? Am I going to do, if I went back into the war zone, would I operate and navigate it in the same way that I did it last time? It's like, okay, what did I learn then that's going to help me in order to move forward in a different way? But also I've got to work on those fundamental core truths and what I believe to be true, those subconscious beliefs, in order to know that I can act differently in the first place. I can do it differently. Right. So I love what you're saying, because we can change them super fast.
And that's part of that. You're right. That's part of that surrender. And a lot of people are like, what do you mean surrender? What do you mean give up? What do you mean? Because then it's like, it's like they kind of picture that as being a weakness, when in essence it's a strength. So when you stop the battle, there's no more war. You win.
Yeah.
You really win. And and I'm sure you have found this to be true when you're working with a client, and you made a comment, everybody wants to be perfect. Oh, I gotta keep on healing myself. I gotta keep on working on myself before I work on other people. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Okay, over 40 years. And you know what? Every time I work with someone in the healing capacity, I receive the results as well. It's a continuous thing through your journey, right? And I worked so hard for probably the first, I want to say at least the first 15 years of my life, every single day, all day long, every free moment that I had, I was moving stuff through. But I did not have what's out there today. Because I'll guarantee you, back in the 70s and in the 80s, there was almost like nothing. In the 70s, there was nothing. All you had was a shrink, right? And then if you went to a shrink, oh my God, they give you a pill, but you had a stigma that followed you wherever you went the rest of your life, right? So that was not an option. And, so it's how do you get this out? And so one night I went for a walk and I decided I was going to give whom I thought was God a piece of my mind, which later down the road, knowing what I know, then it was actually my higher self that I was speaking to. And I'm telling you, you want to talk about a trucker's mouth. Oh my goodness, I think because I was so filled with anger and hate. And I was not where I was supposed to be. I was not supposed to be still living, and I was supposed to be traveling. I was supposed to be doing all these things, right? And I had 3 kids under the age of 5. And it's like, talk about wanting to be like your mother. It's like, no, I am not my mom. I am not having 11 kids, right? This is stopping. Sex 3 times 3 kids? I don't think so, right? I'm serious. So I made the move. I went and had my tubes tied, I was like, okay. But there was still that fear of, what if that didn't work, But the whole idea of just getting past and getting what I wanted, right? Because I was ready to check off the planet. I was done. I was at a dead-end marriage, and everything else. And it's like, that's where I went. I was going to plan my exit off the planet when I just started to just yell and scream and just get it out, to the point of where I was so totally exhausted that I broke down and I gave that surrender. And I was crying. And I hear the voice, "Are you done?" And I said, yes. That was my first aha moment of surrender. And then I heard the voice say, well, who's going to take care of your kids if you're not here? Oh, so you talk about slap of reality, right? Because then I hear my dad's voice say, you're going to have these kids. You're going to take care of them because your mother and I have enough of our own. We're not taking care of your kids. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
This is back in the 70s. Okay. So here you have this scenario taking place. And I'm thinking, fine, let's make a deal. So that was a show on TV back then with Monty Hall, right? Let's make a deal. So it's like, fine. Then if I got to stick around for all this time, then let's make a deal. Okay? And the voice goes, okay. I said, all right, I went out of this dead-end marriage. I went out of Iowa. I had all these things, right? He says, so what do you say to that? You know what the voice said? Okay. I'm like, I'm prepared for this battle, right? And it just says, okay. Like, what do you mean, okay? Right? And it's like, so how am I going to do this? How am I going to get, you said it's okay to have all these things. How am I going to get them? Then the voice goes, mind over matter. What the heck is that? And it's like, okay, whatever, because at that time, I had no clue what mind over matter was. There were no books out there. There was nobody to talk to, right? But I was talking to whom I thought was God, which was really my higher self. And we all have to understand, it's not God that tells us what to or what not to. He put us here to figure it out. So your higher consciousness, which is connected to the divine intelligence, is the one that's going to help you figure it out. That's the how. That's the how. So it's like, okay, so what do I do? So I'm walking back to the house, because now it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, and I'm walking back, and it's like, okay, mind over matter. I don't know what the heck this is. So the hell am I going to do first? And then again, that intuitiveness, I started listening to that voice. It says, live your life as if you were living for yourself and your kids. Oh, well, that's easy enough. I kind of been doing that anyway, right? And I just started listening, and I just started doing. And my life changed continuously, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
I packed up my kids. I moved to Denver, Colorado. You know, it was awesome. You know, and I got everything that I asked for, and then some. You know, so it's believing in yourself. It's creating that change. It's listening to what your higher consciousness is saying to you, right? Because it's coming from the divine. You are the creator of your destiny. It's your truth. It's your belief to stay focused on that, and bringing yourself into harmony and walking that path of, you know, you got extremes on both sides of the planet here. Bring it into harmony and walk the truth of who you are, right? And when you can really tap into that intuition, that's what we were talking about, it just makes life so much easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think so much as you're speaking, I'm thinking about in my own journey recently, I had, you know, I'd been at one stage in my life where I was working 9 to 5. I was in a job and I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be doing that. I was a speech therapist, and I loved my kids. I loved the parents I was working with. It was just more so the 9 to 5 format. B, there was something else I wanted to be able to do. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to travel, all that. And I recognized that in order to make those changes and make those shifts, because I love what you're saying about surrender. And I think that everything has a process, that it's important to remember to surrender and to know to surrender. And sometimes you have to be pissed off, angry. Like you talked about, you're like, I was angry and mad because I sometimes surrender maybe in the moment with all you know from the limited set of data that you have is just doing nothing. And then being like, okay, well, I did nothing and I'm still stuck in this marriage,
right?
Or I'm still stuck here in Iowa, or I'm still stuck wherever I'm stuck. You know, I think we have to go, I think of a diamond, right? A diamond has to be tumbled, and there's pressure and there's all this stuff in order for the diamond to become the diamond. And I think sometimes all we know is what we know, as we've talked about many times. And I can remember people saying, which I don't think you're implying this at all, but I for anybody out there who's going, I'm trying to surrender. Like I'm trying to listen. I can't, I don't know. Like I'm surrendered, you know, there's that sense of like, how do I surrender? How do I do that? Right. I truly think that number one, going within, taking that time to start to get quiet. Sometimes the first step is not hearing, you know, move to Kansas, like whatever it is. It might not be that. What it might be is learn how to hold yourself when you're sad and you're angry. Learn how to be your own mother and tend to your own wounds. Learn how to integrate those sides of yourself, you know, be pissed, process that emotion, do that thing. Sometimes the surrender is in feeling the emotion because the emotion wants to be seen. It wants to be heard. It wants to be witnessed. Sometimes it is in, this is the next step. Like, I don't know where I'm going after this. And I would love to say I'm an intuitive. I work as a psychic. I do all these things. I know exactly where I'm going after this. But the fact of the matter is I'm in Florida. I'm with my family. I love my family very much. But there's a process that's happening in me. There's an alchemy that's happening inside of me. I need to be here in this room doing what I'm doing right now because there was stuff that 6 weeks ago needed to go and I had no awareness. It needed to change, that things needed to be different. But being in this small pressure cooker here where, you know, you can hear somebody coughing out there or, you know, the lawnmower going off or the guy upstairs, whatever, it's not necessarily, quote, where I wanted to be. And yet this has been the most beautiful catalyst for change. and doing things differently. And the universe, I think, gave me what I needed. And my surrender was in just being like, my old go-to was like, I came to visit my family. Everybody's driving me nuts. I'm going to go get an Airbnb in Miami and I'm going to stay there for a few days. Like that was my escape route, right? And it worked because I found some solace. Now the next step, the universe is going, how can you find peace anywhere, no matter who you're around and what you're doing and what's happening in your life? So for anybody who's like, how do I surrender? Sometimes the universe is going to show you how to surrender. And sometimes surrender doesn't mean making everything perfect today. It just means listening to, tending to yourself, hearing what's coming up. And, when I was in my 9-to-5, I needed a certain belief system to be able to quantum leap from this 9-to-5 to being an entrepreneur, because my family belief was, you're in a 9-to-5, your 9-to-5 is safe. And the only people that I had seen in business were all people who were doing things that were either A, illegal, B, they kept filing for bankruptcy. Like anybody in my family's life who was a business owner that we directly knew had super financial troubles. So my family's like, oh God, that's going to be you, right? Like that's their belief and their thought. And on a subconscious level too. So I had to jump, like I needed a certain mindset to get from here to here. And now that I've been here, I'm like, I don't really love all of the mindset that I adopted in order to get here. Now I'm going to refine some of this and go, what do I know about myself now that I didn't know before? What do I want to trim? And then how do I move forward? So I think we're constantly micro shifting and adjusting and changing and shifting our beliefs based upon the set of data, as you said before, about what we know about ourselves in the here and now. And that's what I think is so cool about mindset, is that we can keep shifting it and changing it and growing it at any time. It's never static. We'll never arrive there.
Well, change is the only consistent, right? That's the only consistent. And you really tapped on something with this surrender, because a lot of people don't understand it, and they again associate it with a weakness, right? Well, the surrender is more of really taking a deep look at that inner workings of who we are, is the stuff that no longer serves purpose. So when you can recognize something that's no longer serving purpose, it's like a garage sale, right? Oh, junk. Oh, who can I give that to? Oh yeah, right? That's a form of surrender. So why not do that with your emotions and with old database that doesn't serve that purpose? When you surrender, you remove the inner conflict. So when you're in this inner conflict, like what you were saying, you've got a perfect time here in this last 6 weeks to really revamp what's going on. And how is it that you're going to change? Because it's a continuous thing. Change is going to happen whether you want to go with it or not. It's the only constant there is. So the surrender is about leaving your past behind you, regardless of what it is. Information, database, right? You don't know what you don't know. But what are you going to do with what you know? So information without action is worthless. But when you take action with information, now you have power.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that.
Right? So don't be afraid to surrender. Let it go. If it's creating a conflict, why do you want to keep it? It's kind of like feng shui. I teach feng shui of the physical body, right? But when you look at the feng shui around your home, we had a gal on here a few days ago talking about feng shui. It was amazing. So when you rearrange your house, and there's probably a whole lot of rearranging going on over the last 6 weeks, right? You're changing your external environment, which also impacts your internal environment. So there's a lot of things that you remove and replace, and some of them either went to the garage or went to the, in a different location, or it went to the trash, right? So look at yourself when you're rearranging your belief structures, when you're recognizing conflict. Where are you going to arrange it? You're going to take it out of this file in your subconscious and stick it over in that one? Well, those files just keep getting open. If it's not serving purpose, get rid of it. It's okay to get rid of it. You know, so surrender is reducing conflict, right?
Yeah.
It's not letting go of an ownership of something. So know what it is that you put ownership to, right?
Absolutely. Love that.
Yeah.
And I've found for me too, it's not having shame. A lot of it is not having shame about how I even acted in the past or what I believed in the past.
Right.
Yeah, like, and it sometimes it's just, yeah, that it's that, like you said, it's that internal continual process of going inward and going inward and then going in and then coming out and then going in and then coming out, you know. So I love that.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, the shame game, the blame game, the doubt game, right? It's like, okay, give up the game and focus on your destiny. You know, this is why the windshield is wide, so you can see the world is all out there. And you only have this little this little window over here on the side, this little rear view mirror. You got a little rear view mirror up here, and you got to really study, to see what's going on back there. Leave it behind. That's why they call it the past. So if you don't want your future to look like your past, you better start operating in the now, right?
Absolutely.
Oh gosh, Jess, we could just continue with this conversation like
No.
forever. So we gotta have you back. So if you guys are listening out here, comment below. Let us know what you liked about what she had to say. Where do you fit in the conflict of your life? Where do you feel you are in your own tuition? It's okay to admit that you know things that you didn't know, but you were afraid to share with others, including yourself. It's okay to have those spot-ons and start responding to them, because it will change your life, right?
Absolutely.
So, Jess, if you could leave something with the audience today, what would that be?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. The first thing that popped in my head is stay in your magic. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you've got your
got chills.
things. Just stay in your magic and in what what brings you to life.
That is such great advice, And we all are magical, aren't we? We have that magic wand. Start waving it, start creating your destiny, right? Change that cell memory, that soul cell memory, and be the spirit and the beauty and the amazing being you are, right? Thank you so much for being here on the show, and I can't wait to get you back, right?
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a trip. It was a trip. So now's the time to say, go out there and be that best you that you can be. Why? Because Jess and I are going to be the best we that we can be. And we will see you all on the next show.